Hey y'all, we're in the middle of a pandemic and I just thought we would bake a cake. This is a great recipe that I've had for quite a long time. I got it from a friend that I used to go to church with, and I've made it quite a few times. And so since there's nothing else to do but eat, let's just make a strawberry cake. So I was going to show you how I do it, just for those of you who are new to baking or maybe haven't done it very much. It's not that hard, but sometimes when you look at a recipe on a card or in a book, you have questions and you're not sure what to do. So I'm just going to walk through this. And the only thing I've done before I started the video is get my ingredients measured out. So I know all of you know how to measure out ingredients. So I've got my strawberries here they're frozen strawberries, and they're just the whole strawberries. I think it calls for 10 ounces. So I think I got a little bit more than that because sometimes having more fruit is better. And then I've got my half a cup of oil, half a cup of water, and it calls for 4 eggs and a large strawberry jello. So this cake actually has jello in it. That's what makes it so moist and amazing. But I only have a small jello right now, and since there's a shortage on so many things, I just looked in the pantry and I have a sugar-free strawberry banana jello. So I'm just gonna substitute that to make my large jello. Sometimes you have to substitute, right? And it's a Duncan Hines, specifically a Duncan Hines white cake mix. So this cake is not completely from scratch. You do use a box, but believe me, it's very, very good. The icing is confectioners sugar, just a box with a stick of butter that has softened. So you want to set your butter out. Mine's still actually a little bit cold, but you want it to get soft so that when you begin to mix it together for your icing, it is nice and creamy. And we're gonna reserve some of the strawberries for the icing so that there's actual strawberries in the icing as well, and it makes it a pretty pink. So I have also greased my cake pans. Now, depending on what kind of pan you use, these are actually Pampered Chef. And they usually do a good job, but I put some Crisco in mine, and you can see a little bit of white in it. I don't know if you can see it, but you pretty generously put your shortening or Crisco in there, or you can spray Pam. But I have found that some pans, when you spray Pam, your cake doesn't come out real easy. So it depends on the pan, it depends on the kind of spray that you use. There are some off brands. I've tried lots of them. Some of them work, some of them don't. So a lot of baking and cooking just comes by trial and error. So I have taken both of my pans. This is a 2 to 3 layer strawberry cake. So if you have 3 pans that are the same size, so it'll all frost up even and good, you can use 3 pans, but I'm gonna use 2. And the first thing that we always do is preheat the oven. So make sure your oven's on.
What temperature?
The oven is to be on 350, as you saw. I preheat it on 350, so that's going. And now I'm just going to put these ingredients together and show you what it looks like. So I'm going to take my cake mix. Let me get my scissors. And I just cut it with the scissors. And then put the cake mix in my mixing bowl.
And if you don't have a mixing bowl.
And Grammy's standing over here supervising this whole video, and she's giving me little tips on the side if you can hear her. She said if you don't have a nice kitchen-made mixer, which for many, many years in my married life of cooking I did not have one, and of course she did not either. This is wonderful because you can turn this thing on and you can go to the other side of the kitchen and be working and making something else while this is mixing. But if you don't have one, you use a regular mixing bowl like you have at home, and the handheld, it works the same. So we're going to combine the cake mix, the jello, the oil, the water, eggs, and about 3/4 of the strawberry, and mix it up. So let me just do that right now. Are you guys enjoying this social distancing, or are you hating it? One day we'll watch this video, somebody will watch this video and they'll wonder, what in the world is she talking about? Social distancing. But you know what? I think this is gonna go down in the history books, and we're never gonna forget all these days that we were cooped up in the house, although, to be honest, I'm rather enjoying it. But I love home. So here's my 1/2 cup of water. Just pour in there. And here is my 1/2 cup of oil. I did use EEOV, extra virgin olive oil. You can use whatever oil you have at home. Well, I say whatever. Probably needs to be vegetable or canola. You know, I may not use peanut oil, or I may not use coconut oil, or some of the other oils like that. You could, but I haven't tried them, so I probably wouldn't. And I just crack my eggs and put them in there. The books will tell you to crack them and put them in a separate bowl and then put them into your cake mix, because you could get some of the shell in the cake mix, but I don't worry about that. Also, one thing I did before I started this video was, and I think I just got, some of the shell, thank you Mom, in the cake mix. So you know what, I'll get that out before I mix it up. Let me get a fork. I really did. Get it in there.
Well, that happens sometimes.
It would not happen if the video was not playing, but I got it out, okay? So anybody that comes to my house to try this strawberry cake, I promise you, you won't get shell. And I'm just gonna scrape the sides of the bowl. I'm gonna add the strawberries because I didn't do that a moment ago. Almost all of them. And I put them in there whole. They're still a little bit frozen, so they may not mix real good. They may be in chunks. So I'm going to take a knife actually, and I'm going to slice them. I'm going to cut them in fourths so that there are more pieces in there. Okay, so I got the strawberries in there, and actually I'm just going to beat them a little bit longer. And so I sliced them in half, or if it was a really big strawberry, I just sliced them in fourths so that there's more pieces in there, just to make it go all through the cake better. You don't want to beat it too much with the strawberries in there, because you don't want them to be mashed, or, you know, you still want them in chunks. So that's good. Now we're done with the cake part. The cakes are out of the oven. You can see they look a little bit brown on top, but when you stick the toothpick in, it comes out clean. It's got a tiny bit of red on there, but I think that is from an actual strawberry. Stick it right in the middle, and these look done to me. They actually were only in the oven for about 25 minutes max. So I did check them before the timer went off, and that's really important for a nice moist cake so that it doesn't come out too done on the edges, and you want it to be nice on the inside. So I've set it on my cake rack, which is another pretty important item to have in the kitchen when you're baking, because you want them to be able to cool good. So I leave them in these pans for a minute or two and then take them out and let them finish cooling directly on the, what's this thing called? Cooling rack. Cooling rack. Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to take the cakes out of the pans with you watching, which is a little nerve-wracking. So I'm just going to take a knife and go around the edges just to make sure that the edges come out pretty easily. And then I kind of pat the cake on the counter to kind of loosen it before I completely get it out. And it's still pretty warm, so I hope I'm not doing this too soon, but it's been about 5 minutes since they came out of the oven. So let's try this. I'm just going around the pan to make sure that it's coming out around each edge before I completely let it fall. Okay, now here's my cake plate. Let's see if it all came out. And it did, yay! Okay, so there's my bottom layer. There's actually a strawberry or two in the pan because the strawberries are wet and naturally they're going to stick a little bit to the pan. So I'm just going to take that off and put it right back there in the cake like it was. So now that layer is ready to frost, but it's still really, really hot. So we'll let it sit there for probably a good 20-30 minutes before we try any icing. And this is also a cake that needs to be refrigerated, obviously, since it has jello and strawberries. So you can even refrigerate it before you ice it. I wouldn't say that you have to. If it's good room temperature, you can go ahead and ice it. So I'll just make sure, and I'll let you know how long I waited. But you could even refrigerate the layers and then frost the cake, and then it goes back in the refrigerator before you eat it or serve it for your guest. So I'm going to do the same thing and just make sure that all of this is coming off the sides, and then again I kind of tap it on the counter and I see that part of it's coming away really good, and I tap it again and this is just about coming out. So there we go. That one's perfect. Nothing left on the pan at all. So this one came out really good. Okay, so it's time for the icing. I'm gonna go ahead and mix it up. The recipe actually says for a 2-layer cake, you use 1 box of powdered sugar and a half a stick of butter. Now I do use real butter. I don't use margarine or other options. I make sure to use butter. Now I'll get the store brand butter, but this is actually unsalted. I use both, but we're going to use 1 box of powdered sugar, a half a stick of butter, and then it says add strawberries until you get it to the spreading consistency. So this is another thing that you just have to decide for yourself what consistency you want it. You don't want too many strawberries and it ends up being runny, or it's just going to soak into the cake and not look like the cake is iced at all. You want it to be pretty stiff, so just go a little at a time. That's the most important thing, to go a little at a time. So let's add our powdered sugar. Now if it's a 3-layer cake, it says that you'll use another cup of powdered sugar on top of this box for a 3-layer cake, and you'll use 3/4 of a stick of butter. So mine is a 2-layer. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with the 2-layer portions. So I just put this whole box of sugar in there. It's not many calories at all, I'm sure. And who's worried about calories during a pandemic, right? I am. I'm gonna cut the butter stick in half and just put half a stick like it calls for. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and add about half of the strawberries now. One thing you can do, if it gets too moist, you can always add more sugar if you have it. Now I do have a little bit more powdered sugar in my pantry, but I don't have a whole cup. So I don't want it to get too soft here. So let's try this. Okay, so here's what it looks like at this point. So that's a pretty good consistency. If you put your knife in there and sort of spread it, you'll be able to see how thick it is. Mine actually might still be a little bit too thick, so I think I'm gonna add just a few more strawberries. Again, this is just, you do a little at a time until you get it the way you want it. And I think I can have a little bit more of the strawberries in there without it getting too thin. So the cake is cool enough now, we can go ahead and ice it. So that's what I'm gonna do. So when the cake's done and you're ready to cut it, you have to bring the family in. And there's not too many family with me tonight, but there's one, the most important. So he's going to do the honors of the first bite.
Smells amazing.
Does it?
Yeah. Of course, I came home from work and it smelled like strawberries. Yeah, make it small. Because I just had spaghetti.
We did have supper, so we're not just eating cake. Okay? So I'm going to...
Cut Grammy a piece? Or
Oh,
you a
yes.
piece?
We'll all have a piece. But we'll let Stephen do the honors. As Paula Dean would say, we'll let Stephen have the honors of the first bite. So tell us how it is.
This is so good, y'all.